Hey, happy Monday. Thanks for joining us on our Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter pages today for your lunchtime forecast. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox, and we do have several big weather headlines today to talk about. We have that tornado risk, hail risk, and wind threat across the plains, the northern plains, and the Midwest this afternoon. Severe storms are likely this afternoon and evening. Large hail will be one of the biggest headlines that we are watching for. Baseball-sized plus, so baseball-sized to maybe even possibly larger is possible with some of these storms that we are expecting this afternoon, anywhere from South Dakota over to Minnesota. And that's not the only chance for storms that we have. We also have another round of storms just to the east of where we have them today for tomorrow. But before we get started with that forecast, I do want to remind you about the Texas Roofing Conference, which is approaching very quickly. We're just a few days over 2 weeks out here. That's between September 11th and the 13th in Irving, Texas. We do have an exclusive deal for those who attend the event. Frank will be at the show, so go find Frank at booth 140. He will have exclusive deals for annual plans during the show. Okay, taking a look at yesterday's storm reports. Here's what we saw yesterday. Good amount of wind reports across the plains into the Panhandle, out in western Kansas, out to the western side of Colorado, as well as Wyoming. And you can also see that we saw some pretty large hail, baseball-sized hail up to the north. I mean, pretty impressive there to see baseball-sized hail for some of us. The rest of us, not too many hail reports here. We can just isolate the hail reports, get rid of those wind reports, and you can see that we saw hail. That's where that baseball-sized hail was, in South Dakota. And then we've got some smaller hail in Kansas yesterday, hail from Colorado, out to Utah as well. So not too many of us getting those hail reports, but a few. We've of course got that map. We've mapped exactly where that hail has fallen at hailtrace.com. Let's take a look at your forecast for today. We have a lot going on. High pressure system off to the south and east, bringing high heat in this area. It's going to be hot and humid today. Few showers and storms out near Houston. And then we've got all of that activity from those strong to severe storms expected in the northern plains and Midwest today. We also have a chance for strong to severe storms out on the East Coast. You can see that there is a severe thunderstorm watch in place, highlighted in pink right here, and a severe thunderstorm warning highlighted in this yellow box in New York. So some of us already getting a head start on those storms this afternoon. Farther out to the west, yeah, we've got a few showers, little system out to the west here, but really our focus today is in the northern plains and in the Midwest. And you can already see that we've got some ongoing showers and storms out to South Dakota right now. This will be something that we're watching for later on today, but before we get to the severe aspect of today, I do want to get to those high temperatures. I mentioned that high pressure system that's sitting over southern and eastern portions of the U.S., bringing those high temperatures, 89 here in Oklahoma City, 93 in Dallas, 91 in Kansas City. Man, this weekend was hot in Oklahoma. It was very, very warm. I won't even say warm. It was hot. It was very, very hot across the state. I'm sure that was the same way down in Dallas as well. We got some cooler temperatures farther off to the west along the northwestern portion of the U.S. Let's take a look at some of that convection that's happening right now in South Dakota and North Dakota. I don't see anything severe warned with this. However, we do have some rain coming down in between Rapid City and Aberdeen. We're going to continue to watch this area as we head into the afternoon and evening hours. Back to your temperatures here, 89 in Oklahoma City, 93 in Okmulgee, 93 in Dallas, but you know the drill here. Factor in the humidity, and it feels even hotter than that. With that moisture, it feels like 94 here in Oklahoma City, 94 in Dallas. Actually, I would have expected it to be a little bit higher. So 94, we'll take it. Sometimes we already see triple digits in Dallas. 100 out in Shreveport, 100 is what it feels like in Florida as well. All right, let's get into that severe outlook for today. Let's start with instability. So we need unstable air for the air to rise, and then of course what comes up must come down in the form of thunderstorms, and that's what we're expecting today. We've got that large area of instability anywhere from Nebraska up to South Dakota, Minnesota, and into Iowa. You can see these storms using up a lot of that as we head into the evening and afternoon hours. This is out of Minneapolis, the first round through the afternoon and late into the evening hours. is whenever we'll see our second round. So we'll continue to see this through the overnight hours tonight and into tomorrow morning. You can see that these storms are really using that instability there. Significant hail model, really, really impressive, anywhere from northern Nebraska to southern South Dakota, into Minnesota and northern Iowa. You can see that hail model, really, really impressive. The farther north and east that you had here, we're in the Midwest here. This little corridor right here is where I think the largest hail will be today. So if you look at the SPC, and we'll look at our hail models in just a few minutes, but if you look at what the SPC has, I pivoted the SPC forecast down just to the south, just a little bit, to factor in some of these larger hailstones that we could see today, just because that significant hail model is pretty impressive in this area. Lapse rates were also pretty impressive in this area as well. But we won't get into too much of the meteorology here. I want to get into the timing and the biggest hazards. Taking a look at your future radar here, we're really focusing on two different areas for storms today, okay? We've got round one. I've got a graphic for it. Wait for it. There we go. Okay, round one, farther out into the western portion of South Dakota. So that's where we're watching for round one. You can see it's kind of hugging the Wyoming, South Dakota, Montana state line right there. Round two will be on the western portion of Minnesota, coming out of South Dakota. So right on this line here, the South Dakota-Minnesota line, you could get two different rounds of storms today, and then anyone to the east could also get two different rounds of storms today. So there's that first round coming through, tracking to the east into Minneapolis, and then of course we've got that second round farther back to the west, coming through the middle of South Dakota. This continues to track to the east as we head into the late night hours tonight and into early tomorrow morning. You can see that second round coming through the South Dakota-Minnesota state line. And then once again, round two into Minneapolis into the early morning hours tomorrow, which could impact your morning commute. Now I know we just went through the radar, but I want to go through it again. I want to get really down into it here. So I've zoomed our radar in, and this is your future radar. This afternoon, we're first watching for these storms out to the west here, for places in western South Dakota. If you're out in eastern South Dakota here, you're gonna watch this first round of storms, okay? Does that make sense? We've got two different areas bookending the state right here. This will happen through the mid-afternoon to late afternoon hours, continuing through the late evening hours tonight and even into early tomorrow morning. The biggest hazards here will be up to baseball-sized hail and 80-mile-per-hour wind speeds. This will continue as we head into the overnight hours. As I mentioned, this could be waking you up overnight tonight, so make sure that you have several different ways to gather those weather alerts, whether that be by your phone or a weather radio, or maybe even your local news station. You can follow Hail Trace. We're pretty good about watching these storms as well. However, you definitely need several different ways for weather alerts because this could wake you up through the overnight hours. Okay, we're gonna restart our radar here, go through this for Minnesota now. First round of storms starting out by that state line, continuing to track east just a little bit later into the evening hours. So we're talking right around dinner, maybe even a little bit later than that. That first round of storms coming through between about 8 and 10 o'clock for Minneapolis. That second round of storms coming through while you are asleep. Maybe the early morning hours, if you're an early riser, maybe you're up for this. Maybe you're driving to work at this time and you've got storms on the radar. So make sure that you check the forecast before you head out tomorrow morning. Once again, some of the biggest hazards here, I think earlier on, the biggest hazards are going to be that baseball-sized hail. However, later on, with that second round of storms through the overnight hours, I think wind will be a bigger threat here, up to 80 miles per hour for your wind speeds. All right, let's take a look at your hail forecast here. We're taking a look at the biggest, the largest hailstones. Where are we seeing that? Anywhere from southern South Dakota all the way out to western Minnesota, even into Minneapolis. I think that we could see some pretty decent hailstones here. We're talking up to 2.5 inches. But I do have a max forecasted hail size up to the size of a baseball. So that's pretty impressive here. Okay, your biggest risk. Where could we see the best chance for these storms to come through? I have right through South Dakota, mainly on the southern side where these storms are a little bit more widespread. If you go farther out to the west, these storms are a little bit more isolated. You have a lower chance for seeing storms down in places like McCook. It's going to be very, very isolated down there. However, a much better chance for storms right through South Dakota and Minnesota, as we have been talking about all forecast here. I have a red panel actually for a high risk for storms to come through Minneapolis, not only because we get one round of storms, pretty widespread across the city, but also that second round later on in the overnight hours into early tomorrow morning. Again, your max forecast hail size here up to the size of a baseball. I think that's definitely possible with some of these isolated storms that come through. Let's talk about the wind forecast here. I have 80 to 85 mile per hour wind speeds. Could you see stronger wind speeds? Yeah, I think it's going to be very, very isolated to see anything close to that 90 to 95 mile per hour. It's possible, but I think it'll be pretty isolated. The tornado forecast, also something that we have to talk about today, because not only are we watching for that wind and hail threat, but also that tornado threat. Pretty low chance, but it's still on the board for places like southern and western South Dakota, even up to Minneapolis. Pretty low chance. The better chances will be right near the state line into central and eastern South Dakota, western Minnesota here. I think Sioux Falls, I think this is Sioux Falls. That's something that if you live in Sioux Falls or if you know someone who lives in Sioux Falls, make sure that you send them a text to make sure that they are weather aware for those storms that are happening later on this evening. All right, taking a look at your future radar tomorrow. We're getting into Tuesday now. That risk shifts from the plains out to the Midwest. So you'll see those storms through the Midwest tomorrow through the early morning hours, and then once again later on in the evening and even into the overnight hours. We have a pretty good lineup of storms anywhere from Chicago all the way out to Ohio. I do have that forecast for tomorrow here. Hail forecast looks like it's going to be on the smaller side here, anywhere between 1 inch to 1.25 inch hailstones. I may raise that up tomorrow whenever we see more models. I could definitely see some larger hailstones in there. We'll have to look at the models for that tomorrow, but I do think this will be primarily a wind threat. But of course, we'll take a look at it tomorrow. We'll be back with your noon forecast tomorrow for that hail forecast as well. Okay, let's take a look at your temperatures. We're staying hot across the southern and eastern portion of the U.S. You can see the deep south getting into 97 for your high tomorrow, 98 in Shreveport, 96 in St. Louis. Staying pretty hot, kind of shifting to the east here, 92 in St. Louis on Wednesday, 99 in Memphis on Wednesday. Yeah, we're kind of pushing the heat this way just a little bit, cooling down for a little bit across the northern portion of the U.S. Let's take a look at that extended outlook here. We're getting into September. Where did August go? But we are finally getting into some cooler temperatures. You can see that we cool down anywhere from Minneapolis down to Oklahoma City. That is perfect timing for Labor Day weekend. I think Oklahoma City is supposed to be in the 80s for Labor Day weekend, so we'll take it. Taking a look at that 5-day rain chance, it looks like we're going to see a lot better rainfall totals through the Midwest, out to the east as well, staying dry along the west coast. But we start to see that pattern change as we head into early September. Better chances for rain anywhere from the west coast all the way down to the southern portion of the U.S. Usually at this point we take a look at the tropics. However, the tropics are very, very quiet. The Pacific, pretty active. Atlantic, very quiet right now. So we are still waiting on that activity to ramp up. The National Hurricane Center said they still have some pretty confident forecasts that we're going to see a lot of activity later on this month and into September. So we'll definitely have that forecast for you whenever we see more activity in the future. Let's go ahead and hit that follow button. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. We've had a lot of fun things on TikTok and YouTube here lately. You can also reach out to us for any of those wind, hail, or tornado maps. Of course, we have some big forecasts coming up, not only today, but also tomorrow. So if you see any damage nearby that you want a map for, you can give us a call at 855-334-4245 or email us at info@hailtrace.com. We also have a blog at hailtrace.com where you can get more information about us. And of course, that blog has a lot of science fun articles in it. So if you are a weather enthusiast like we are here at Hail Trace, you're gonna like our website. All right, thanks for joining us on this Monday afternoon. We may see you back here if we have any big storms today. We also do live forecast or live storm coverage as well. But for now, I'll see you back here, same time, same place tomorrow.